Welcome to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast. Here you will meet a variety of carvers working throughout North America. Drawing on our collective experience, we seek to share knowledge about this ancient art and to do our part to ensure that stone carving will play an important role in built environments for generations to come. So whether you are an experienced carver, new to the craft, or just curious, put on your safety goggles, open up your mind, and welcome to the workshop.
I'm Matt Johnson.
I'm Bethany Lee.
I'm Joel Norwood. Welcome, everyone, to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast.
So, Joel,
Guys.
you grew up in Ohio.
Yes, the great Buckeye State, surrounded by cornfields and pride. That's right.
The pride grows tall in Ohio. Where'd you go to college?
It's a good state. The Ohio State University. So, yeah, I went there for agricultural communication, and so learning how to do things like produce podcasts and all those good stuff. And my day job, I'm a farm broadcaster, so I do agricultural news on radio and TV and all those good things. So
It's very interesting. I want to ask you about that soon, but how did you get interested in stone carving?
Yeah, so my day job is very digital communication and things like that. And so communication, stuff that you poured a lot of time into, and it has a fleeting life, as in something you do a lot of work in, maybe lasts for 24 hours, 7 days until it's sort of off the docket from being relevant anymore. So I wanted to do something that worked with your hands, do a lot of that. I'm in the agricultural world, so I love just being outside and dealing with the natural environment, but also the world of craftsmanship and, growing a skill. So I came across the world of stone carving years ago and got really into stone lettering in particular, and that's what I do on the side. Something that lasts.
Where did you come across stone?
That is a good question. I was into wood carving for a little while, but then I was thinking even this is kind of fleeting and not as unique as this other thing I had seen. I think I had watched a small documentary about the John Stevens shop and Nick Benson and family, who are based over in Rhode Island, and they do stone lettering and specifically and traditional style. And that beautiful craftsmanship of that style just stood out to me, and I really wanted to learn more. And I found out it was a small world of people who had an immense amount of talent, like the Stone Carvers Guild here, and by just quickly reaching out to a couple of people, they offered their assistance, their guide, and the best advice. And this happened from multiple people, said, just like carving in stone, will yourself into existence and just get out there and start doing it. So there you go.
Wow. And how did you tool up? Did some people give you some pointers? And
yeah, I started off with the wrong tools. I started off with the wrong things. And then I dove in and bought some Alor chisels and some, tungsten carbide tip stuff. And I've slowly been adding to it and, get the air hammer and all those good things. So,
cool.
So we're getting there. But I love working in lettering stuff in particular, both in things like slate and then some more just natural stone from people's farms and things like that. But bringing a old world traditional style to it.
And do you do you do lettering for what kind of lettering? Do you get commissions, or are you just you buying eggs or something with your I was making a bartering joke. Do you barter with the stone carving? That's
Do you Bartlett with your stone carving, Matthew? Okay. Anyways. I'm today's guest in the podcast, right? That's what it sounds like so far. No, I'm just kidding.
I know you want to divert attention away.
I do.
Before we do, tell me, what do you get commissions? Is that what you do?
Well, and I still do some, stuff for my own learning and things on the side, whether it be, again, pieces in slate or marble or stuff like that. But I've been getting more and more commissions to the point where it's a job to have to pick and choose which projects to take on, and then also maintain the family life and the full-time day job thing too. So there could be choices coming up down the road.
When do you make time to carve?
Great question, Bethany. That's the key right there. Early in the mornings, and then late in the evenings, and then on weekends. So right now, luckily, I've got a kind of unique work schedule that also is allowing more time during the work week for more stuff like that. So
Do the kids help you?
no, because he's 14 months old. He's really no help at all right now.
No, they're just
We just have
freeloaders
one.
at that
Just
age.
one.
I
Exactly.
think one.
So working on the craft now, so when he can help, I'm like good enough to give him actual pointers. It's not,
Yeah.
and then he can not so quickly surpass me. Right? That's good. Yeah. So there you go. Hey
So
guys,
our
who are we
guest
talking
is-
to today? Let me continue to
Yeah.
divert the attention away from me.
Nick Fairplay, just down the road.
Fellow Ohioan,
Sort of. I mean,
kind
he's
of
English.
Yeah.
transplanted.
Sounded to me like dug his foot in Ohio and couldn't get out.
So before we go to his interview, I just have to tell you that his studio is a great place to be because we have tea every day,
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh.
like high tea. Like Nick is a
High tea?
great pastry chef. He's made us an almond tart or an almond. Is it a tart? Anyway, he made us this. Like it was a pie that
A
had
tort.
almond tort. A tort.
Yep.
Maybe that's it. And then he also made custard tarts. And he's a fan. Yeah, so we have tea every afternoon at 3,
That's
and
awesome.
like he bakes for us. It's
That's
great.
fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, he mentioned that in
rough
the
life.
interview. He mentioned that it was touch and go there. Whether he was going to go into
did mention
stone
it.
carving or
Mm.
pastry chefery,
Right.
whatever you call that,
That's right.
pasty chefing.
He's still deciding, sounds like. He's still deciding. No. What? His work is amazing. And if you look in the show notes,
is
you
really
can see
gorgeous.
some of that stuff on the website. And Bethany, you're getting a firsthand look at that by working with them. And then also, it's pretty cool that we were able to record there right in person with him there.
Yeah, and I don't know if I made it clear in the interview. Maybe we did, but right. So I'm working with Nick for the month of August. He has like extra projects right now. So, and his studio is on the grounds of Cleveland Quarries, which has as I understand it, they have a sandstone quarry, and then they also have a mill. And Nick frequently ends up working with them, and so we were recording in the meeting room of Cleveland Quarries, which is in the building adjacent to Nick's studio.
Is it sandstone or is it limestone or
Sandstone.
exclusively?
The
It's
quarry is sandstone, but they
Wow.
they sell limestone that is quarried elsewhere, and then they cut it there. I
you
just
have to
haven't
wear
had time
rest-
to get a good tour yet. So
Oh, do you have to wear respirators the whole time that you're there? 'Cause
no,
sandstone's
it
dangerous.
only the guys who are actually working with the sandstone when they're cutting sandstone wear
Okay.
the respirators. Yeah.
Okay. It's a nasty beast.
Yeah. No, it's mostly limestone and Nick's
That's
studio,
good.
at least right now.
Limestone just gives you those special boogers,
And with that,
but it won't kill you. It won't kill you. So thank you,
that's
limestone.
good. That's good.
I think there's a quote from Walter. He's like, it's just like breathing Tums. It's like, I don't know if I want to breathe Tums. Calcium carbonate.
That's what a doctor told. I think this is now turned into urban lore amongst stone carvers. So whatever that is, it's like stone carver lore. Is that someone went to the doctor and they said it was just like breathing Tums or breathing a glass of milk. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to breathe
Seems
milk.
like two different
Sounds
things.
terrible.
I know.
Or Tums. Like
Those sound
you're
deadly,
taking the
to be
Tums
honest.
wrong.
Yeah.
All right.
So-
Should we get into this podcast? Because it's really good. And I feel like we're sort of just like the pre-show to the good stuff coming, right? There you go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
How are you doing, Nick?
Pretty good, I think.
You must be really busy.
At the moment, I think since the pandemic, we got very busy.
Yeah.
Very strange. Before the pandemic, I think maybe a couple of reasons. People not traveling, people not getting work from China, maybe Italy, because of the cost of shipping, and people spending more money on their homes.
Yeah, it's strange. That's happening down here in Texas too.
Yeah.
It's like just
And I think that's a little bit of, I mean, I don't knock the Chinese work 'cause I've been to China and seen how good their work is. But since sort of the last administration, they've knocked China quite a bit. So people are looking more for American work too.
yeah, yeah. What do you think about the Chinese work? It's been interesting to watch.
Well,
them
no,
for
I think it's
25
I
years.
think it's really interesting going in the factories. You can't believe how big they are. That
Yeah.
once if you look at their Chinese work, I saw a lot of work, Buddhist work for Buddhist temples. It
Right.
was amazing.
Right.
But when they came to the European work, classical work rather, they were completely lost. They didn't understand because it's not in their nature. They're not used to looking at acanthus leaves.
Right.
So they don't really know how to deal with them. They can't just walk out onto the street and see them carved, unless you're in maybe Shanghai or somewhere with a lot of
Right.
European work. But their gravestone work, they had, massive amount of work all ready to be shipped to Japan, Korea, Europe, America, gravestones, just thousands of them lined up, all carved. And they just get a design and just keep knocking it out. And their work was, it was pretty high standard apart from, classical type work, which,
Yeah.
they just didn't quite understand.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like cuisine or music. It's
Yeah.
just if you don't grow up with it, it's going to be a second language.
Yeah, and I think sort of I do find the Chinese on the whole, they're a little enamored by Louis the Sun King and Louis XIV. They love that French sort of Louis XIV, where more detail is better.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go into all these hotels in China that are dreadful bad, because Louis XIV is, it's so feminine and, overdone, and it looks fantastic if it's well done, but if it's not well done, it looks a nightmare.
Yeah, a lot of the work that I've seen lately, it kind of it looks like if you look at it just straight on, it looks good. But as soon as you move to the side of it or approach it, it's got a flatness to it that seems like it seems like it's born out of just an unfamiliarity with it.
Yeah.
You're looking at a photograph and you're copying that. And
yeah, but I mean, having said that about Chinese work, I've seen bad European work and bad American work.
So I was actually listening. Do you remember we talked on tape, I guess in 2016, I came to your studio and
Oh yeah, I vaguely remember. Yeah.
And so I have the advantage of having re-listened to that. But I thought your story about how you started at 16 and just kind of moving through that whole apprenticeship process,
Well,
Could
look, I'm like,
you tell that story?
yeah, I started at 16. I'm like 66, so 50 years carving now. And I think, I guess now I'm just getting the hang of it, but I think sort of when I started at 16, things were very different. And I worked in a shop where they had no pneumatics. I didn't use a pneumatic for 10 years. Everything had to be by hand because there was a sort of nationwide ban on pneumatics because of carpal tunnel. And so no one would use them because the companies wouldn't, because people wanted more money to use a pneumatic because of carpal tunnel. So no one would use them. So, did everything by hand, which was, pretty amazing. And then I think, working in a shop, they had like about 15 banker masons. Now, as an apprentice, you had to do a bit of everything. So you had to do banker masonry, and then you had to go, work in the drawing office, go on site and install, and go to technical college and do sort of, technical drawing. And to give you a really good sort of education in it. But I think that when I first went there, they actually didn't want me. and I said to them I told Bethany the story, I'd worked for free, for free for 6 months. And so, of course, everybody loved free. So I got a job there for free, and I knew I had to be better than their 2 apprentices. So I made myself very available to anybody that wanted help. And I worked really hard. And then after 6 months, they fired the other apprentice and kept
Was his name Raymond?
Yeah, his name was Raymond, yeah.
Poor Raymond. He didn't know that he was up against a force of nature.
So, Nick, you said you've been working for 50 years. Okay, so considering that we have a time limit on the podcast, and if we go through your life, we're probably going to get about 5 years into that by the end of the podcast. So can you give us just an overview? What are the main places you've worked and things that, like, you've mentioned to me that you started off at the cathedral and then that you, at a certain point, did classical carving. I know you've been to Egypt. Your website is just the
resume goes on and on. It's amazing.
It's on and on. So can you just give us like an overview of everything you've done, and maybe then we can drill down into a few areas?
Well, I guess I started off as a banker mason, and then, and as a banker mason, I'd say this, you really obsess over line and surface. And then I wanted to be a carver, so I managed to get a job, I won't give the long story, at Westminster Abbey, where we were working on the north front Henry VII chapel, all 13th and sort of 15th century, late 14th, 15th century work. And there as a carver, I remember the first day there, they told, and there was a much larger production. They had like about 100 men on site, maybe a few more. And they had like 25 banker masons, they had another team of guys working on the cloisters. But, we were doing basically start with the north front, and the stone was Portland, which was a very hard stone, and you're all working by hand. And, so I went there carving, sort of stiff leaf carving. I was basically a gargoyle and foliage carver. And I remember them saying to me, as a banker mason, you obsess over line and surface, but as a stone carver, you deal with form, color, line, speed of line, and the surface is something you arrive at. So, so that type of, so it's much, it's very good for me to be in a shop. Because I felt that as a banker mason, I got to the sort of apex and I couldn't get any further. So doing working in a shop where all of a sudden this whole world of carving opened up to me. And then there was one carver there, a guy called Arthur Ayres, who was quite a well-known carver, and his assistant, and he was carving around 20 statues, one after the other. It would just go and talk to him every lunch break, any moment I could, see what he was doing, and kind of, picked up a lot from him, and as much as I could. It's a big difference there when you're working on a building, when you can go up to actually like a 13th century statue and actually look at it on the scaffold and look at the detail. It really does help. And then, like, again, later, I remember when I was working at English Heritage, Department of the Environment, they brought some statues in by a guy called Bushnell that were carved of Charles I. And they were carved for a temple bar for an Indigo Jones building. I remember looking at those and thinking, oh my, it's so fascinating seeing all his detail and how it was so Baroque. And this was a guy who brought sort of Baroque carving to England and he was English but had worked in Italy. And you could see all of the Italian, stuff that he had added on, and everything before that was sort of, didn't have that. So it was really fascinating being able to, look at old carvings. And the reason I was at English Heritage, because most of my life, I just worked on Gothic up to that point. I wanted to work somewhere where I could learn more about classical carving. So because English Heritage oversees all of the stately homes, so we'd work on, Chiswick House, buildings like, classical buildings, Apsley House, doing, Corinthian capitals for them and stuff. So it was really great for my education to work with guys who were mainly classical carvers.
And just to kind of, so you started when you were 16. About how old were you when you got to English Heritage?
I was probably like in my 30s.
Oh, okay. So this
maybe
is
35.
This is a long. This
Yeah.
is a long.
Yeah. So because I'd gone from Westminster Abbey, I went to art college. I realized, Arthur Ayres, his advice he gave to me was, you need to learn you need to go and do life drawing. You need to learn to draw. So I went to college to learn to draw and do life modeling, because I'd actually carved my first statue on Westminster Abbey and realized how bad it was.
Did they put it up anyway?
Yeah. No, I mean, it wasn't that bad. It was bad when I look back. It was,
okay.
it was just a bit stiff, awkward. I didn't know enough about the figure. It was a good copy, So going to college and just doing drawing and learning about composition more, learning about life drawing, modeling, just sort of opened up the doors. If that's, the French in the 17th century copied the Italians and sent all their carvers, they set up a school to have them do life drawing. Because carving is like three-dimensional drawing. So you really, drawing is a very valuable. And as a sort of artist, if you want to learn, it depends what you want to do as a carver, what type of carving you want to do. Do you want to do, there are letterers, there are people who just do monumental work, there's people who do architectural work, there's figure carvers. What do you want to specialize in? So you really, if you want to do everything, then you've got a big hill to climb.
Right.
So, the learning the tools at first is a steep curve, but you learn that pretty quick. Learning what to carve takes you the rest of your life. So, anything you can add to that to make yourself, better, because do you want to carve other people's designs, or do you want to carve your own designs? If you want to carve your own designs, you need to learn composition, design, and how to draw.
Is there anything that you had wished you had found out, learned earlier in the process, that looking back through the lens of reflection that you say, you know what, I found that out later than maybe
I wish I'd gone to business school.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing being a good carver. Being a good businessman is something completely different.
Okay, so first with the different cathedrals, Gothic, English Heritage, Classical. What did you do after that?
So I happened to be working with a friend of mine, self-employed, and we were working on all these dolphins for the top of the Royal Naval College in Greenwich. It's an amazing building. And this guy walked in and said, "Oh, my name's Bambridge. I'm the master mason for St. John the Divine." And then, so to cut a long story short, he employed me to go to New York on an endowment of the arts grant to teach inner city kids who were training to build this cathedral in New York. So then I, ended up in New York doing that project, training carvers to do carving. Most of the carvers were banker masons to start with, which was kind of a little bit of an advantage for me, because I knew that, that was, where I grew out of. So, I spent about 4 years training there, and then I went back to England and worked for English Heritage.
Were you there at the same time that Joseph Kincannon was?
Yeah, Kincannon was one of the students in my shop. There was actually Joseph and his brother, Jeep. Then a whole lot of people, Cynthia, a guy, African-American Rubin. And at the beginning, I was actually, there were a couple of others. At the beginning, I was also teaching the banker masons as well, until they got, and I was teaching them geometry until they got a new banker mason to come in and teach them from England.
Joseph told us a funny story about how he was in the gift shop.
Yeah.
And had this pretty plush just job sitting in the gift shop, but was desperate to get out there and work in the yard with you guys. I think he ended up on the saw for a year or so.
Yeah, that was before I went there. So what happened to me was I got there and they said, we want you to pick 4 students to start off with to be, 4 apprentices to be carvers. But Banbridge took me aside and said, don't pick this person, don't pick that person, don't pick that one. Then the dean did the same to me. He said, oh, I want you to pick this person, that person, and this person. Then they had another guy there who was in charge of the administration, and he said, make sure you pick some African Americans because we need them for publicity. So I thought, what am I going to do? So what I did was I carved a crocket, quite a large one, and had all the people who were interested to come and carve one. So they all came in and sort of carved one. And then I put numbers on them, and I wrote their names on the bottom. And then when Dean, Banbridge, and this other guy, Wally, came in, I told them they had to pick the best ones from the numbers. So they didn't know who they were picking. And so it was like like the lottery. But that was the only way I thought I could get out of it.
That's pretty clever.
That is. Did they get their way?
Yeah.
So they were kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place because they told everybody had a chance. And then so they picked everybody, and I had everybody kind of come in when they said who was going to be in the shop because their names were on the bottom. So it kind of worked out.
That's wonderful.
Very cool.
Where does Egypt fit into all of this before we go on?
Egypt I was interested in doing a dig in, so I met this guy actually, at the time he was with Chicago University, and Mark Lerner, and he was running a dig in Egypt on the pyramids, and he was actually looking for the city that everyone lived in who built the pyramids. But I was interested in finding. There was a dig done by I think either Cambridge or Oxford way back, and they did this dig where all the ramp to Cheops's pyramid was dumped, and they found a load of stone tools and unfinished sort of blocks that were being shaped, but they never recorded anything. So I wanted to do a dig there to see whether any more of that could be found. But I don't have any archaeological experience. So he said, why don't you come along to the dig, and I want you to look over all the ruins and see if you can give me any evidence of construction things, so of how things were constructed. So I went, and the first year I went, I was involved in a dig on the backside of Khephrun's pyramid, where Reisner said that there were these long walls, and he said they were, this is where the people who built the pyramids lived. So we did a random dig there and realized these were storerooms. They weren't. They were storerooms for the priests. So it was and we kind of, I think most people knew that, but it was just to prove that. But it gave me some experience on a dig. And then me and Mark, and often me by myself, I had a great piece of paper that because they had all these taftish sort of police that stop you from doing stuff, that I could go and climb up anything, go over anything by showing this piece of paper. So I'd climb over stuff, and you would notice, say, on the pyramid, on a lot of the pyramids where the casings collapsed, there'd be peg holes at the end to run a piece of string, and there were like sort of little things, construction things. There'd be a sort of gash in the pyramid which would show you the center line. There were little sort of things like that that
nice.
sort of going along looking at. But
Wow.
that was about it. So I went back and I went there like a couple of times until the whole dig got shut down. All the digs got shut down. Trouble.
Wow. What an awesome experience.
No, it was very interesting. What was even more fascinating, we went out to Hell 1, which is named correctly. It was hell. It was completely hot, no trees, just the desert. But they pulled back. That's the reason why the pyramids are in the desert, is because if you pull back the sand, there's solid limestone. So that's your foundation. You don't need a foundation.
Got it.
And then they dig down, and do tombs. But Hell 1 is where all the Torah limestone, that the casing for the pyramids, because the stone at Giza is very kind of soft. The Hell 1 stone is really fine and a little bit more durable. So it's about 20 miles from Giza. So they kind of, shipped it over there, whether by barges. They had actually they built a canal up to the pyramids to float stone, which is, so they would take the granite from, way down in, southern Egypt, all that granite, and they would float it all the way up to, Giza for the granite, for the tomb, for the ceiling on the walls of Cheops. They had blocks there of 40 tons that they put in place.
And so the skin or the veneer,
yes,
how thick is
that was stolen later.
that was taken and probably reused for other.
That was taken later to build the city walls.
Got it.
And actually, if you go into one, there's quite a good mosque you can go in. I can't forget the name of it. And if you go in it, they reused all the pharaonic columns from some temple there in Giza. So they were very good at reusing stuff.
I've heard that's why the Colosseum looks the way it does, is because they started quarrying the Colosseum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Quarrying the building.
Yeah. So when was that? I didn't even know about that.
Back in the 80s sometime. I don't know.
Wow.
80s.
Did y'all find evidence of a stone yard or tools? Did you ever find?
No, we didn't get that far because that was the year after that. It was all shut down. No one could do any digs. All the American site was shut down, and it was all taken over by Dr. Zahi.
Got it.
And I can go, you can go on for it forever, but I'll try not to.
Yeah.
So how'd you come to Ohio?
Because I was working in California, and I was doing a lot of work for the governor's mansion in Salt Lake City, and a lot of rich houses there in San Francisco. And then the .com crash came, and everything kind of dried up. So I managed to get this big job carving for Atlanta, actually, carving all these large Corinthian capitals. And they were all like sort of 4 foot tall, so they were pretty big. And, the stone's all out here, really. And a mill out here, Cleveland Quarries actually offered me a space to do it there. So I came up just to do that job and ended up getting stuck here.
I'm also in Ohio, so
Really?
don't badmouth the Buckeye State too much. Just kidding.
Right.
Just kidding.
Okay.
You've told me a little bit, a long time ago actually, about why it is that you decided to move to the U.S. Can you tell me again what it was that made you leave England and move here?
No, I think I got very frustrated with a lot of bad work being done. For one thing, I won't mention names. There was I just really love medieval work, and I'd just be crying when I see someone ruin a bad piece, do a restoration and do bad carving on it, And, I give you a very good example. When York Minster caught fire, the roof, and they rebuilt a lot of it, all the medieval roof bosses, which were in wood, some of them quite a few of them they had to replace. And they had a competition on some kids program for people to design roof bosses for this old 13th century building rather than replace copies of the one that were originally there, which I just thought was appalling. And I mean,
Yeah. Were they doing a fundraiser?
We have better taste.
no, I don't think we have better taste. But, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. You have bad taste everywhere. But I mean, it's like any building. You look at, I don't know, I think Durham Cathedral, all the columns were painted. Someone in the 1900s thought it was a great idea to scrub it all off so the columns would look more unified. So, people are doing stuff like that all the time.
Mm-hmm. I thought you had said something to me about, maybe I'm making things up, about how you wanted to come to the U.S. because you wanted to be able to make new things.
Actually, that's true. So I think, like if you probably look back, probably like 20 years ago, we had quite a good business just doing fireplaces for new homes. And we just did fireplace after fireplace. And that was actually quite fun, designing stuff. A client would say, oh, I want a fireplace with foliage on it, or I want this. So that was, that was great fun. So not all the work here in America is restoration. There is there's a lot of restoration. But I do love the fact when you get, when you're able to design something completely new and able to, work, out on a project that's, completely brand new.
How do you balance your enjoyment or your prioritization of those kinds of work? Would you do completely new things all day, every day, if you could? Or do you like a balance?
No, I think with stone carving, the good thing about it is every job's usually completely different. You can be carving marble one day, and then the next day you're doing limestone statues. The next day you're doing a fireplace. And I think that is one of the nice things about carving. You don't know what you're going to be. You're not working on one building like I was at Westminster Abbey. But so each job is almost completely different. The materials could be different, the type of carving completely different. And, that is an exciting and interesting part of it. I think, as my bad business, we just run from disaster to disaster. We got, at the moment, so much work. You're just trying to get stuff, trying to do high quality and get stuff out the door. Because, you can't get, it's very difficult to find, good carvers and the amount of time you have to spend in training people.
How do you feel about like the way that like American carvers develop as opposed to the structure of the English system?
Yeah, that's a little bit tricky because, if you work, for me, working, say, Westminster Abbey, when you literally got 100 people there and you got 20 banker masons, you've got you had like 6 carvers. It's not, your learning curve is much faster. It's not the work you're doing, it's the work you see other people doing as well. So, I may have never carved a canopy for a statue, but I've seen someone do it, so I know how to do it.
Right.
So that sort of confidence and that quickness of learning, and you have all these people to go up and talk to.
Sure, right.
Tell you stuff. And I think sort of that's a very important thing for me, is that I was told at the very beginning by a carver, whatever I teach you, you need to go and teach somebody else. He said, if you don't do that, the trade will die. And I've worked with other carvers, I won't mention which country, but they eat spaghetti, where they won't tell you anything. And they'll turn their back on you when they're doing stuff so you can't see what they're doing, because they don't want you to know how they're doing the technique. And I think that's the wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
Better way is to, because once you're a good carver, who's worried about competition? What do I have to? If you're confident enough and good enough, then you don't have to worry about competition. So you want to help everybody to learn. It's like this carver told me, look, if you want to, I used to do wood carving too, and I used to work with wood carvers, and this wood carver said, people have been carving ball and claw feet for like 300-400 years. All you need is 3 chisels And if someone shows you how to do it, it's bang, 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 bang. Now, you can develop on that, but it's so helpful for you can sit down and work out how they did it, but why reinvent the wheel? Someone just tells you and you can do it and you can knock it out, and then maybe you can improve on it. Maybe you can change it, modernize it. I don't know. But he said, if someone can just give you that piece of information, then everything falls in place and makes life a lot easier.
I think that like the more good carving there is out there, the more demand there will be.
Yes,
for
exactly.
Good carving.
Yeah. Well, that's why everybody thinks of Carrara, because you have a location with lots of carvers. So people think, oh, everything marble's going to be done in Carrara.
Right.
And it's the same, if you had a location like that here where you had lots of carvers, and again, the sad thing is, in England, like I said, I work, Westminster Abbey, 100 men. I talk to those guys, they would say, oh, after the war, after the bombing in London, you had shops with 400 men in. And not just one shop, lots of shops. The rebuilding of London was massive. All the stone, all the stone carving going on. So the standard was really high. And that's the problem with America, is you have shops with one person working on their own or two people. Right. So you're not getting that learning experience from other people. And in a way, I've been lucky working around in different good shops, because, what you learn in one shop where you're just working limestone, but you don't know anything about marble.
Right.
Then you go work in another shop where people do marble or marble carvers, and you like, wow, I didn't realize that. And then you go work in a shop where people just do sandstone. You learn all these other techniques or tricks that they don't do in limestone. So,
Can you tell us your idea for the, not the workshop, but the thing at the bricklayers with the different kinds of stone and, yeah.
Yeah, I had this idea about what would be quite good is and I was talking to Bethany, about have to write something up to try and get some funding, to have an idea to promote American stone. Because everybody, half the jobs you're on, they want French limestone, they want Italian marble. And well, what about American materials? And what about, training that to have some project where you have something like a bust, and that's that's maybe say like 2 foot tall, and you have maybe, you have like 10 different stones from different American quarries, and you carve the same object, the same bust in all these different materials, and have this, give everybody a stipend. At the time, I was talking to the Bricklayers Guild, and they said they had a facility, where we had the guild meeting in their facility. They said it would be a good idea, we could use their facility because they have dorms and a facility for carving. And the idea was really to have like 10 busts, all done in different materials. You could have like, Alabama marble, Indiana limestone, Barry granite. There's, a whole load of, different colors, Alberine soapstone, all these different materials. That the same object, and the idea would be to have this as a show. Maybe you'd send, for architects to look at, to see American materials and how the object changes in different materials, but also to use it to raise money to get a stipend for the carvers so that you could have people being trained how to carve a bust.
Have you been in talks with the brick organization?
I did. That was a long time ago. It was when...
it was when we had the meeting there.
We had the meeting there, and I think it was, Matthew Redabach was involved.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's a great idea.
But I think, promoting carving students and then promoting American materials. Because, you just have to look at the American, was it the American Stone Institute? Yeah. They built their building in, I think it's in Washington, and they built it out of French limestone. It's like, why? Why?
They love
an American.
They love irony. It's in their mission statement to be ironic.
I thought it was a really interesting observation what you had said earlier today, actually, about how you learn so much when you have lots of people in a studio, and that right now we don't have anything like, and that right now most carvers that you meet in the guild were either at St. John the Divine or at the Washington National Cathedral, or trained by someone from that. And so just the idea that, gee, it would be great if we had another St. John the Divine right now. And how could we do that? I thought that the workshop was a really cool idea.
Also, when you're working with other people, you really have to, you get very competitive. People get competitive. But also you can see how fast you're working compared to other people. If you're working on your own, you don't know if you're actually slow or fast. So when you see other people working and then you may be someone else will approach it differently to you, and you'll learn something too, or you'll learn, what you're doing wrong, or, even as old as I am, you can still learn off of things, off of people.
I thought the system that you described about, you were telling me about the English heritage method of getting everybody to stay on time, which was to basically create a bonus that...
Oh, no, that was Westminster Abbey. So
was that in Westminster Abbey?
Yeah, okay. That was really funny. So that was this guy Locke, who was actually Margaret Thatcher's main man, breaking the unions at Downing Street, which was a big strike. And he got the job afterwards running Westminster Abbey as he was retired, basically. So he was, every you had a union meeting, the union guy would be trembling, and he would I really liked him. He would sit in this chair, because I was a union rep for the carvers. He would sit in a chair and everyone would have to stand in a line, and they couldn't stand on the carpet. You had to stand off the carpet. And then the union guy would say like, "Oh yes, we demand more money for cleanup, going home and in the morning," and he just wouldn't say anything. It was this fantastic pregnant pause, and he would just pull his pipe out, fill it with tobacco, poke the tobacco down. Then he would sit in his chair, and he had this massive window behind him, so you're kind of blinded. And then he would swivel his chair round and puff on it, and then turn back. And then the union rep would blurt something stupid out because the pause was so long. And then you knew that you'd lost, But he devised that they had a bonus plan. So every single job, whether you're setting a stone on the building, cutting stuff out, carving, doing the banker work, because actually we as carvers got a little more than the banker masons. So all the capitals were already masoned, and we just got the carving block and did the carving. So every piece of carving had a time on it. Now, if one person did not make that, if I had a capital, if I had like double caps, we had these capitals that were double caps that go on top of these columns. So one of those would be 14 days to do the carving by hand. If you couldn't do it in 14 days, the whole entire 100 men lost their bonus. So so basically you get beaten up. So the incentive to hit your times was really quite big.
No pressure.
Yeah, and were these times they were negotiated at the beginning of the...
Yes. So they negotiated, and you could go up and say, "This time's ridiculous,"
Uh-huh.
If you felt that.
But once you accepted the contract,
right? It was like
you were in.
So once you're well, so the head carver, they had a head carver. So once the head carver, this guy Charlie Cox, had accepted all the times, then we all had to follow. So
wow. That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Wow.
From a management point of view, it's genius.
The funniest one, if you did 40 hours, if you didn't come in 1 minute late, you could work Saturday morning for time and a half. But they had this little scam going where 2 people would get clocked in and they wouldn't come to work. And then one morning they pulled everybody in the canteen there and said, And they read out the roster of who was there that weekend. And they said, was Peter here? Yes. Was Nicholas here? Yes. Was Charlie here? Yes. And they said, everybody says Charlie's here. He's clocked in. Yep. We have to tell you he died on Friday night. No. So they call it that one.
Did that expose the entire scheme or just that one?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was stopped. Yeah.
Wow.
So, Nick, we should wrap up. And there are lots of questions that we didn't get to. So hopefully we can continue the conversation at some other time. But can you just give us kind of a snapshot of what does Fairplay Stone Carving Studios look like right now? And where do you hope to be taking it in the future?
Well, we're working on a couple of projects. We have this house in Wyoming that is a sort of Gothic house, and we're doing a lot of spandrels, carved foliage spandrels that, Bethany's working on, and quite a few other people, Brian and people have been working on. And that we move on to the next stage on the interior, which will be a large fireplace. I don't know what else is down the road on that project. I've just been doing some drawings for the fireplace. And then at the same time, I'm working on a project for the Greek Gardens in Martin Luther King Boulevard, which is a relief 15 foot long with 32 figures of Greeks on it, like, Plato, Socrates, etc., etc. And that's going to be in Indiana limestone in 3 panels, 60 by 63.
What's it?
Then Cleveland.
Oh.
In Cleveland itself. It's the Hellenistic Society. They have a load of gardens, the English garden, the French garden, et cetera, et cetera.
No.
And the Italian garden just got done up, so the Greeks want their garden done up.
Uh-huh.
The other project, we have an altarpiece we're doing for a church in Indiana. I can't remember where. We're just finishing up. And then there's just some other stuff down the pipeline, some more foliage carving for a house and other stuff I've bid that we're waiting on. So I don't know what's down the road. We'll just wait and see, really. But it'd be nice to get on and do some of my own work if I can get some time. So we'll see.
Well, we definitely want to have you back. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. This is
good.
Your story is so interesting. I would like to just spend an hour talking about Egypt and that whole exploration of things. But, thank you so much, Nick, and thank you, Bethany, for arranging.
So hey, guild meeting to Egypt.
Hey, yeah, no, there you go.
Yeah, that's a lot more fun than a Zoom call.
We just need to get the grant.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Well, hopefully lots of people will listen to the podcast and sign up for the guild, and then we'll have lots of participants for stuff like that.
That's right. You've been listening to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and we hope that you will find us online at stonecarversguild.org. There you can find photos showing some of the things that we discussed today, additional information about our guest, and if you're so inclined, ways to get more involved with the Guild and our ongoing activities. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, we hope that you will subscribe and rate us on the podcaster of your choice. 5 stars, please. We'll be back in a month with a new episode, so until then, keep your hammer up and your chisel sharp.